Hello everyone! Welcome to another episode of Classic Reddit, where real humans read Reddit content. Today's Ask Reddit question is by Avian Altercations. Lawyers of Reddit. What is the dumbest legal advice you've ever heard given by somebody who isn't a lawyer? The number of people who aren't aware of or understand the concept of at-will employment is astounding to me. The conversation usually goes something like this. You got fired for insert virtually anything other than being a member of a protected class and whistleblowing. Sounds like a lawsuit to me. They don't realize that in most places you can get fired at any point for any reason with very little notice. The best advice is to never give a reason. Anytime I've had to fire someone, it was simply because their services are no longer needed. Unless they're being fired for doing something illegal rather than just against policy, because then it usually screws them out of unemployment coverage. I had a part-time coworker who was trying to say it was against labor laws to deny her time off. You have no rights. It has come to my attention that you and the cleaning woman have engaged in sexual intercourse on the desk in your office. This content is the property of Megacorp, and I claim no rights to it, except the right to distribute it to millions of people on YouTube for no charge. This is either the nicest way to violate copyright or a giant Q to the copyright holder. I still remember the days when every F-serve on IRC or a website hosting Real Media TV episodes had the following disclaimer. If you are affiliated with any government, anti-piracy group, or any other related group, or were formerly a worker of one, you cannot enter this website, cannot access any of its files, and cannot view any of the HTML files. If you enter this site, you are not agreeing to these terms, and you are violating code blah 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 of the Internet Privacy Act signed by Bill Clinton in 1995. And that means you cannot threaten our ISPs or any person or company storing these files, and cannot persecute any person affiliated with this page, which includes family, friends, or individuals who run or enter this website. Spoiler, this act doesn't exist. What kills me is when fan sites do palette swaps on copyrighted images and then get irate when other sites steal their artwork. Just sell your house to your sister for $1 and then you won't have a house. Really stupid divorce advice. That's called a peppercorn in contract law. Essentially, it's calling something bullshit based on the old English conception that no reasonable person would give up an expensive object for a peppercorn. This isn't technically legal advice, but it's a misunderstanding of the law that gets really old. People think that the First Amendment's free speech rights extend beyond government action, like when A&E temporarily suspended that guy for his anti-gay rant. A bunch of people started shouting that he had the freedom to say whatever he wanted, and A&E was suppressing his right to free speech. It's only the government that isn't allowed to suppress free speech, and even then there are many exceptions. An employer or any other private entity is totally allowed to censor pretty much anything they want. That's not what the First Amendment is about. That, and the right to speak freely, is not the same as the right to be heard. You can stand on a cardboard box and yell about how the gays are bringing down society, but if you're doing it on my lawn, I can tell you to fuck off without violating any of your rights. It's only the government that isn't allowed to suppress free speech, and even then they're an exception. Can you explain why I can't say fuck on television or radio? Yeah, that's a pretty outdated comment. Cursing's like way more accepted nowadays than it used to be. You can get away with a lot. Oh, an epic response by Patches67. My parents. I went to pay for a bad speeding ticket that had to be settled in court. My parents really nagged into me like crazy that I had to have a long, dragged out excuse for my actions, or else the judge was going to throw the book at me. They kept saying over and over, "You've got to think of something big to excuse your actions or you're fucked." Thank God I was not the first person on the docket that day. I would have totally fucked myself. I had a million things going through my head about what excuse I would have for the judge. I spent a couple hours watching other people testify before, and I noticed a rather significant pattern. Every single person who pleaded with an excuse had the book thrown at them. People who kept their mouths shut and pleaded guilty simply paid the fine and were sent on their way. One guy who pleaded with an excuse was hauled away in handcuffs, and his speeding ticket was only $50 higher than mine. And right on the ticket it says in bold letter, "You cannot plead guilty to a lesser charge," which turned out to be bullshit. Every single person who kept their mouth shut, including me, paid a reduced fine and was sent on our merry way. I don't even lose any points of my license, but I found out months later that there was likely because the traffic counts records were so far behind, they decided to trash rather than follow up on who was going to have points taken off of their license. These court systems just want to move shit along. Please, whatever the hell makes them the least amount of trouble and effort you can, get off pretty easy, as long as it's not too serious of a charge. This is bordering on bad advice. You can plead not guilty without penalty. If the judge decides you're wrong, you pay your fine. What you cannot plead to a lesser charge means that you can't just say you committed a lower crime and get off for the more severe crime. Because this court displays the incorrect American flag, it had a fringe on it or some dumb thing, this court has no jurisdiction over me. I do not recognize the authority of a court that hangs the gold fringe flag. A flag with gilded edges is a flag of an admiralty court. An admiralty court signifies a naval court-martial. I cannot be court-martialed twice. That is all. This sounds like some stupid technicality that would have come up during the Good Will Hunting, where he tried to be his own legal defense, and references came from the 1700s. Not a lawyer, but whenever someone advises the spouse of a cheater to empty the bank accounts or to liquidate a joint asset and put it solely in their name only, you're advising someone to commit textbook fraud transfers if it goes really badly. That person may be penalized in favor of the cheater. Family lawyer here. What do you mean I have to pay spousal support? I know a guy who makes more than me, and he didn't have to pay for anything. Do you know how much money his ex makes? No. Do you know how their assets and debts were split up? No. Do you know if the wife was even looking for spousal support at all? No. Well, every case is different, and that's why your friend may have gotten a very different result. Long pause. Yeah, but he makes way more than me and doesn't have to pay his support. Oh my god, that must be frustrating. Mostly advice on how the feds would have no right to do pot raids in Colorado. Ha, depends on what you did. My bad, I replied to the wrong comment. I meant to reply to a comment that said, "Talk to the cops, they are your friends." Definitely depends on what you did. If you are being interrogated as a suspect for a crime that you really didn't do, invoking your right to an attorney will just make you look more guilty. No, just no. If the cops are suspicious of you anyway, what do you care if they think about you asking for a lawyer? Even if it does make you look more guilty, it's a lot better than a confession they got you to sign because you don't know the law and you let them convince you that a situation was hopeless. A confession which now your lawyer has to try to get thrown out, or, failing that, try to get a jury not to believe. Too long didn't read? Always get a lawyer. I agree completely, 100% that you should do that. I would, however, won't you concede that there's a jury out there somewhere that will look at you in a negative light for doing so? Yes, I've sat in a jury, and I know the judge instructs the jury to not assume guilt when the defendant lawyers up, refuses to testify, etc. But isn't it possible? I'd rather look guilty sitting at home than look innocent in jail. Ha! If you're talking to a jury, you're already in danger of being thought guilty. If you're there without an attorney, they'll think you're both guilty and stupid. I did this in a funny thread on Reddit, and a real lawyer jumped all over my shit. I had to link him to the scene. Care to elaborate? I'm not exactly sure what you mean by this. Guys, I get it. It's a joke from Malcolm in the Middle. The number of people on this website who think any kind of injury is a ticket to the instant litigation jackpot. Litigation is lengthy, costly, and at least in my state, widely discouraged. Even if you find a good attorney, you may be waiting months or years for a payout. And unless you were lucky enough to be injured on a boat or by some blatant gross negligence, you'll be lucky to pay your hospital bill when it's all over. Some people believe that anything is fair use so long as they give credit to the owner it cites fair use. Those people are morons. If a hooker asks somebody if they're a cop, cops have to tell the truth. When one of my Facebook friends put this on their profile, they're no longer my Facebook friend. Privacy notice. Warning. Any person and or institution and or agent and or agency of any governmental structure including, but not limited to the United States federal government, also using or monitoring this website and any of its associated websites, you do not have my permission to utilize any of my profile information, nor any of the content contained herein, included, but not limited to, my photos, the comments made about my photos, or any other picture art posted on my profile. You are hereby notified that you are strictly prohibited from disclosing, copying, distributing, disseminating, or taking any action against me with regard to this profile and the contents herein. The foregoing prohibitions also apply to your employees, agents, student, or any other personnel under your direction or control. The contents of this profile are private and legally privileged and confidential information, and the violation of my personal privacy is punishable by law. Ha! I got unfriended when I said that this disclaimer was ineffective and does not supersede the Facebook terms of service. I really hate that one. It just shows how ignorant and stupid most Facebook users are now. Ignorance about everything. Like, you can do whatever you want in your own home or on your own private property because you govern your own property. Murder is legal as long as it's on your own property? No. Fuck no. So, you're telling me that I can't stab the vacuum cleaner salesman 50 times in the chest when he comes into my house? Oh shit. I have something to take care of. The other one that gets me is, I have rights, being translated to, I can do whatever I want. Laws are in place for a reason, and having human rights is different to being a total prick. Not a lawyer, but I've heard some stupid things. Prostitution is illegal, but pornography is legal. If you want to hire a prostitute, all you have to do is instead offer to pay her to have sex with you on camera. Now you're making porn, which is legal. If you were considering buying drugs from someone, always ask them if they're working with law enforcement. If they say they are, you can avoid making the transaction. If they say they are not, you can't get arrested because it would be entrapment if they lied. If you aren't read your Miranda warning, you can't be convicted. The police have to read to you your rights the instant they handcuff you. Ha, yeah, those are all bullshit. As to number 3, that kind of annoyed me about 21 Jump Street. I liked it and all, and I know it's weird to pick on one thing that was unrealistic in such a ridiculous movie, but I could think about, after watching that scene, was how they completely misrepresented the law. There has to be a third party paying the actors for it to be legal porn, I'm fairly certain. Well, oh man. Cop here, not a lawyer. But every time I hear someone ask, I heard, insert any random possibility, is entrapment. Here is an example of entrapment. Undercover cop tells you, if you do not buy this crack I'm selling, I'm going to fucking kill you. Entrapment can only happen if a cop makes you do something you wouldn't normally do. So basically, they have to force you into making a crime. That's entrapment. They can just lie and get you to commit a crime if you are planning on buying a drug. They don't have to tell you the truth. And Miranda rights, I pretty much only read Miranda rights to arrestees about 30% of the time. You only have to read Miranda to someone when they meet 2 qualifications. They are under arrest, or reasonably believe they are under arrest, and you are interrogating them about the specific crime for which they are under arrest. So apparently, if you're just arresting them, you don't read the Miranda rights, unless you're the person who's going to interrogate them. Huh. Not a lawyer, but a few years as a child advocate. Happens every time. Little Johnny is 13, so he can choose what parents he wants to live with. Biggest line of horseshit I ever heard. So, I'm ignorant about this sort of thing. Can you tell me what you mean? Why can't little Johnny choose which parent he lives with? No answer. Pretty much everything I've ever read on Reddit is bad legal advice. In general, I tend to find people think the law is full of loopholes, and a good lawyer will just find some clever out, like in tax code or something. People will always come to me wanting to sue a neighbor for something before even going to ask the neighbor. Just use your head. That's the IRS isn't legal, and that you have no duty to pay your taxes. It's legal, and you will pay your taxes, or they will find you, and they will take the money out of your bank account. Probably not the worst, but I saw this one a few days ago. Someone said that you can't be sued if you use trademarked or copyrighted material for nonprofit, open source projects. That is incorrect. It's actually the other way around. If you use open source projects for commercial purposes, you won't be sued, because that's what an open source free license project is. But if you take someone's copyrighted content and you make it free open source, that's not how it works. Spend $3,000 on a DIY trust kit to avoid legal fees. Most people just need a simple will, which generally costs a few $100s. Also, deed your house to your kid to avoid federal estate tax. You know, unless you're worth more than $5 million, you won't even be subject to that tax. Plus, you no longer own your home, and your kid might be an ass and evict you. University cops aren't the real police. Yeah, they'll just cuff you with fake handcuffs, throw you in the back of their fake cruiser, and take you to fake jail. Just be honest and tell them what you know. If you're innocent, there shouldn't be a problem. In reality, shut your hole till your attorney arrives. Yeah, it's basically true. You shouldn't talk. Not a lawyer, but the idea that modifying a firearm will get you sent to prison if you have to use it because it shows you were looking to kill someone. Absolute horseshit. If it was a justifiable shoot, it doesn't really matter what you've done to your gun if you were legally justified in shooting the person. True, but your gun will almost certainly be confiscated for forensic work, even in the case of a justifiable shooting. If your gun is illegally modded, don't act surprised if you get arrested or in trouble. This is a real thing. Some people have become so used to seeing miraculous police technology on TV that if they don't see it in a real trial, they don't believe it. What? Why didn't the police just recover 35 DNA samples of the alleged arsonist semen from the light socket? What do you mean they couldn't just ultra-enhance the video footage? Not guilty. Freemen are an issue in most common law jurisdictions and variations thereof. One of the saddest things to see are people who believe all of this shite, then trying to use it to resist various court cases, usually to recover debts, most often debts over land. For a great many people, in desperate circumstance, they will turn to cunts like this who tell them that they figured it all out, and all that happens is they incur more costs and wasted court appearances, and they waste time that they could be using to fix their problems. It really is a disgrace. Thanks everyone for watching. If you want to make this kind of content where you teleprompt, you explore the internet, read and react to content in front of you that you pick based on your interests, please reach out to us. We want to have a Zoom call with you. To get in touch with us, go to our YouTube channel, click on the About page, get the CAPTCHA done so you can get our email address and say hello. We'll set up a Zoom room so we can talk to you about making content on a YouTube channel. The advantage of this kind of video is that you can make these videos every day, and it takes 30 minutes to make 25 minutes of video. You don't have to spend hours and hours editing to get 20 seconds of content. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Ciao.